Hello everyone, Ace here, and today, well, I'm just going to have to go ahead and say it. Jim Sterling accidentally admitted to being pro-harassment in the latest Jimquisition. At least that is the end result if you follow Jim Sterling's argument to the logical conclusion. In fact, it's also an admission that Jim Sterling supports plenty of other disgusting things that far leftists have done over the years as well. And don't worry, we will be getting into some of those examples too, once I get past the 1 minute mark so I don't get my video demonetized. But as previously mentioned, this was found in the latest Jimquisition titled The Political Cowardice of AAA Publishers, which was released on May the 30th of 2022. Which is of course yet another example of Jim Sterling trying to convince everyone that absolutely everything is political. The age-old battle cry of the far leftists who want to turn everything into far leftist propaganda. And on that subject, I believe it is specifically because of this belief that everything is political that Jim Sterling has made such a massive mistake. Because the end result of believing that everything is political is also believing that staying silent on something is somehow tacit support for the status quo. Which is interesting when you realize just how much this status quo includes far leftists getting away with things that no one else would be able to get away with. And frankly, no one should be getting away with, period. But don't take my word for it. Here is Jim Sterling's own words from that aforementioned Jimquisition.
And remaining silent in the face of an oppressive status quo is support for the status quo. Like it or not, aggressive centrism is absolutely a political stance. Failing to make a political statement is itself a political statement. It condones and accepts human rights abuses. It condones and accepts theocratic fascism. Anti-woke gamers, you can throw your aggressive apathy around as much as you want, but like it or not, you're in this. We all are. This wave of political abuse affects your friends, your family, your colleagues, and your silence in the face of it speaks fucking volumes.
So yes, not having a political position is itself a political position in the eyes of Jim Sterling. And also, yes, failing to speak out against something that is part of the status quo is itself tacit support in the eyes of Jim Sterling as well. But if that is truly the case, then let's apply this reasoning to Jim Sterling's actions. For example, I have long been critical of the fact that Jim Sterling has actively gone out of the way to ignore the harassment campaign that Jason Schreier was involved in against Sophia Narwitz, as well as the harassment campaign caused by Zoe Quinn against Alec Holaka, which resulted in Mr. Holaka taking his own life. I have been critical because I knew full well right from the very beginning that the argument that everything is political is itself an argument against the very concept of neutrality, and instead is one of fundamental compelled speech. For you see, if you are not actively speaking out against all things that you personally disagree with at all times, then it is just going to be assumed by the far left that you secretly support those positions instead. Now, I personally do not believe that every single thing ever created is political. I do, however, believe in holding people to their own standards. And so, when Jim Sterling argues that Jim Sterling believes everything is political, then it is perfectly reasonable and fair to assume that everything the far left does that Jim Sterling does not condemn openly is something that at the very bare minimum Jim Sterling tacitly supports, and is simply too cowardly to admit supporting said positions. To provide another example of something the far left has done that Jim Sterling has not openly condemned, let's talk about the super straight controversy, which saw people who were super straight, and for those who don't know, super straight is a sexual orientation where people are attracted to cis members of the opposite sex. It saw those super straight people, along with super gay, super lesbian, and super bisexual people, face harassment from far leftists who decided to argue that super straight people, super gay people, super lesbian people, and super bisexual people were all evil bigots, specifically because of their sexual orientations, and that they could not refuse consent on the grounds of sexual orientation to trans people. Now let me make this very clear to any far leftists who are actually watching this video. Anyone who claims that super straight people are transphobic because of their sexual orientation, anyone who genuinely makes that claim is pro-rape. But to tie it back to Jim Sterling, I should mention that Jim Sterling at no point ever condemned the actions of those who were harassing super straight people. Meaning that by Jim Sterling's own logical conclusion, Jim Sterling is pro-rape. And it is therefore perfectly reasonable to accuse Jim of being such, until evidence directly contrary to that position in the form of an actual formal statement is made. In other words, until Jim Sterling actively comes out in support of super straight people, it should simply be assumed that Jim Sterling is pro-rape by Jim Sterling's own logic. And frankly, that is one of the worst things that a person could ever politically support. Now, of course, for those curious, I will be leaving a link in the description below to the Jimquisition in question, so you can check it out for yourself if you should so desire. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.